Welcome, everyone. Thanks for coming out today. I'm Ryan Braun with uAvionix. Do we have any tail beacon or sky beacon owners in the room? Anyone who's familiar with some of our products? Wonderful. Thank you so much. The last couple years, we've been working pretty hard to build on the success of the sky beacon and tail beacon. And a big unaddressed area we felt was cost-effective solutions for the panel to really be able to move a lot of these vintage aircraft that we all have up into the next generation, increase that level of safety, remove the vacuum systems from the aircraft. And that's a big part of what we're going to talk about today, what we see as kind of that next generation of avionics that works well in our type of aircraft, the type of aircraft that we have here. I'll start with a little refresher just for those of you who do or do not know who we are. We are a company that was founded to work on ADSB, essentially. So it's a bad word for a lot of folks in the general aviation community, but it's really important that everybody be able to see everybody we feel. So we started working on unmanned systems on drones, but pretty much the entirety of the company are pilots, and we thought it was really important to be able to bring that same high technology that reduced costs, the shrinking of the electronics into the GA space. And so we work on that from everything from small drones to GA aircraft to large aircraft to stratospheric balloons to aircraft vehicles. We've got a really interesting portfolio of products. Just so you know where we are, what we do here, we're based in Montana, and our manufacturing facility is in Columbia Falls, which is near Glacier, beautiful area. And then we have an office in Leesburg, Virginia, that does a lot of our regulatory work, which in this business is quite a bit. So we started off offering experimental solutions, which made us very popular here at Oshkosh. We made the Echo UAT. There's a lot of those running around in RVs and other aircraft here. But we knew there was a big market on the certified space, and most people have heard of us for our tail beacon and sky beacon, which are certified. We also make portable systems, the Sentry, which works with ForeFlight, Scout, and similar products. And we have some new transponders. But the big thing we want to talk about are panel displays. The sky beacon, and tail beacon X, just a quick refresher. Does everyone have ADSB already? All right, does anybody not have ADSB? All right, I think my audience wants to hear more about panels than that, so we'll skip over the ADSB. If anyone has any additional questions on that, I'm happy to answer them. I will just put in one quick plug for our tail beacon X, which is the new transponder solution that we have. So a number of you, sounds like, may have a tail beacon or a sky beacon. The tail beacon X is the next generation of that. That's designed to replace your transponder completely. It's really important for our international customers. We didn't get as many international folks here at Oshkosh this year, but there's a lot of interest in that because it is the international version of the tail beacon. I'll take these pauses for the air show as necessary. The sky beacon and tail beacon, of course, fit in these unique wingtip lighting solutions or tail lighting solutions. And we thought that was really important to make something that was easy and cost-effective to retrofit. The most important thing here is how we get that cost of installation down. This shows the type of thing that we do. We take the wingtip light or the tail lights, and we retrofit those. Well, how do we do that in the cockpit? What's the way to get the installation cost down for panel displays? And it really comes down to trying to be real creative with your engineering and make it not connect to a lot of things, or not too many things if you don't need to. So we want solutions that are going to be installed in hours and not weeks and months, which many of us have seen downtime for our aircraft approaching that. So our tagline on these are displays that don't suck. So a reference to the vacuum systems I think many of us would like to remove, I think. We have both certified and experimental versions of these. What's shown here is the AV30C. It's our 3-inch instrument. I'll tell you lots more about that here. In the middle, the picture you see is the AV20, and that's a 2-inch instrument. So the AV30 is a full-featured primary instrument that can replace your attitude indicator or directional gyro. The AV20 is a really fancy clock replacement. So it fits in that clock hole. It functions as a required clock, but it also does 11 other things, including standby attitude, outside air temperature, G meters. So a bit rote here, but we have a lot of key features on the AV30. When you think of what you could fit in a 3-inch hole, we've tried to put everything possible that you could get in there. What we really wanted to do is make this thing look cool in vintage aircraft, though. So we wanted this to look like a mechanical attitude indicator. We didn't want it to look like a computer. We didn't want it to be a box sitting on front of the panel. We wanted it to be a round instrument. There's one device that can function either as your primary attitude indicator or as your primary DG. It's the same hardware. You can configure it either way. In a certified scenario, if you're replacing a required instrument, it's essentially a one-for-one swap. So you'll have an attitude indicator that you remove, and you'll put in one of ours configured as an attitude indicator. Same thing with the DG. For experimental, folks have a little more flexibility on how they design that. They may just put in one instrument that can effectively function as both. We'll walk through a few of these things, but bus voltage meter, G meter, indicated airspeed, true airspeed, altimeter. It's certified for all of these functions, but just 2 primary, which is the AI and the DG. So on the left, we're showing it in the DG mode here. This looks a lot like your traditional DG with the card. There's a couple other views as well. You can use it as an unslaved DG, or you can use it and be fed by your GPS. So you can get magnetic track off of the GPS, so heading or track. There's a lot of customizable data fields. You can make these things look pretty much how you want them to. You can put up all different data fields, textual data, graphical data, and save that configuration. So every time you come back to the instrument, it looks how you want. The second configuration is as that attitude indicator. Here we're showing angle of attack information, airspeed, altimeter, vertical trend, and then again we have these customizable fields that could show GPS information, bus voltage, G meters, a lot of things. And then the third bit there is what's called the nav data screen, and it just shows the GPS interface. So we're able to hook to just about any GPS out there, whether that be a handheld or a panel mount system. And that'll show your here we're showing the magenta line. You can also show an HSI or CDI presentation for that. So the goal here is to get that installation time down. The units themselves for the certified version is $19.95, and for the experimental version is $15.95. We don't want the installation to be double or triple the cost of the unit. And as we have brought down the cost of ADSB, we tried to do that same thing. We didn't want a multi-$1,000 installation. So the most important thing there is not to tear your panel apart. We don't want you cut them big square holes in the panel. We want to take that existing hole and fill it with something that looks and feels a lot like what you have, but performs like a modern instrument. So we consider it to be about half the install time. We're very price competitive, probably the best pricing on the market as well. And again, it's just one device that can perform all of these functions. So you don't have to buy 3 different versions of it for 3 different things. The installation, as I mentioned, drops right in your panel. At a minimum, you have 2 wires for your power and ground. You also need to hook up your pitot and static to this. That gives, of course, your airspeed indication, also helps the attitude indicator, and it allows you to do angle of attack. So minimum installation, 2 wires, pitot static. You have lots of options for other things if you want. If you want to hook it to your GPS, you can do that. If you want to hook it to an outside air temperature sensor, an off-the-shelf one, you can do that as well. The battery is field replaceable pretty simply. You've got just some screws on back there. So again, trying to keep that cost of recurring maintenance down. Nothing to run between the units. They function independently. The goal of most people here is that they can remove their vacuum system then. So I've spoken with some folks this week here that have installed these and have pulled 55 pounds out of the aircraft. As you know, if you look at the legacy AIs and DGs, they're pretty big. The vacuum system as a whole obviously is. So getting 55 pounds of useful load back would be pretty nice in a lot of our aircraft. This here shows the GPS interface. In a moment, I'll switch over to a view that lets you see in real time, basically a simulator of what this looks like. But the important thing here is that it's compatible with most all GPSs, portable or panel mount, and it has two main presentations. In the upper right, you see that CDI or HSI presentation. Currently, that's only for VFR guidance. The units are approved for IFR, but the guidance that's provided and displayed on the screen is VFR only. And then the other view is, of course, that what we would consider a moving map type of view, so that the magenta line appears, and you're able to view the ground speed, the track, cross-track air, bearing, things like that. There's also alerting on this. The units have a built-in audio interface, so you can do angle of attack alerting. That's a configurable probeless system, so it doesn't require the addition of another probe out on your wing. Makes it very easy to install, again, part of what we consider our value proposition to be. We have G-limit alerts that you can set, as well as a G-meter you can view, and then you can adjust some roll limits. All of those will have staged enunciations that will first pop up in yellow on the screen, then red, and then eventually start squawking in your ear if you choose to hook up the audio. Another pretty neat thing this can do, if you're looking to make a really consolidated panel here, is control our transponders. So that tail beacon X that I spoke about, that can be hooked to this, and you can dial your squawk code. It provides the altitude information. It allows you to perform all of your typical transponder functions, but it's all done right from this one unit. So those of you that have an experimental aircraft with the pretty compact panel, maybe room for one instrument or one big and one small, this one instrument can essentially do everything that your typical 6-pack plus your transponder controller previously was doing. Another thing we're adding here, we currently have this available for experimental, and we are certifying it, is the ability to hook this device to your portable ADSB receiver. So I assume many of you have a wireless portable ADSB receiver of some sort. Can I get a show of hands who flies with ADSB in? It's pretty standard these days. A lot of people with Stratux, Stratus, or Sentry products. We're really broadly compatible with this, but it gets that traffic right up on the panel. I mean, I fly with ForeFlight personally, and I have it on my knee, of course, but sometimes you'd like to see it right in front of you as well. And so this allows that. We're also working on integrations that further tie what's happening on your knee to what's happening in the panel. So there's a lot of information in our AV30 that can go out to your iPad, and a lot of information that can flow back. And so that's something that we're really excited about, and I think with each subsequent release, that's going to get more and more rich. And we really see that as the future of the cockpit avionics. You know, having the iPad to have all that really, really rich information, and that primary flight display really put things in front of you that are needed. You have a question? It does. It talks back and forth. The question was if it talks back and forth with Wi-Fi or Bluetooth, and the answer, it uses Wi-Fi. So most of the ADSB receivers use Wi-Fi, your standard ones for most manufacturers, and it's compatible, I can't say with every single one, but broadly it is. Do you have a question, sir?
Yeah, you said with each subsequent iteration it gets richer and richer. Is this going to be something that's updatable with firmware, or are we going to have to buy a new one every year?
Yeah, the question is if there would be firmware updates available or if you have to buy a new unit. The answer is firmware updates. So we're working both with our EFB partners to be able to display more of that information. So that's software updates maybe on your iPad or the ForeFlight software, for example, as well as add more capabilities on the display itself. All of these devices are field updatable. We've never charged for an update to date. I don't have plans to right now. So that's something that we're really moving along. So traffic alerting, all the rich functionality that we can basically move back and forth, flight plans, things like that, that really allow us to connect the cockpit. Those are all in our roadmap right now.
Is this wired into the X, or is it Wi-Fi?
So you asked about the tail beacon X, and to control that, it's wired. Yep. Yeah, so it does require running a wire to the tail. Where the tail beacon and sky beacon, you only had to have the power, your existing power. To control this requires that, and it sends the squawk code and it sends the altitude information essentially over that. Sir, please. Well, you don't have to. What you have works fine with you today. Should it not in the future, should your transponder not function, should you decide to go to a different airplane, they're both valid. And so they both work, they'll both keep working, but you may have requirements to fly internationally that you might want the tail beacon X, which other countries work with. So it's really a kind of a personal choice or your mission. So yeah, interconnectivity of this. Everything that we're doing here is basically new functionality for a new device. The sky beacon and tail beacon continue to perform exactly as they have. Those products were designed to work independently. So there's no squawk code to dial on your sky beacon or tail beacon. It just keeps doing what it's always done. This is what the device that gets the Wi-Fi into this looks like. It's called the AV Link. And it's just a little Wi-Fi adapter, essentially, that plugs in. And this shows what the traffic looks like on it. Looks like a fairly typical traffic display. Some people really want to get that up on their panel. It has configurable range, filtering, all of the things that you would expect from that. And again, all of that information is just pulled from that portable receiver that you already have. So try to keep that cost down. So this is what the AV30 unit looks like. Now this is kind of a poor representation of it because it looks like a square unit. That round ring goes in your panel, so all you see is the round portion. All right, so it's a really beautiful look in that panel. Really has a great vintage look. I mean, we tried to make it look just like a traditional attitude indicator. But there's a lot of functionality that you can do here. It's obviously in a demo mode, going very fast up and down. On the left, you have an indicated airspeed and an airspeed tape with configurable V-speeds. On the right, you have your altimeter. You have your ball on the bottom. And towards the top, you have your roll marks and your pitch ladder. Here we're also showing the bus voltage. The beauty of this system, and I think what really sets it apart from a lot of the others, is how configurable it can be. How many different things you can make this do. And to do that, you simply push the buttons on the bottom of the display, and you can change everything that's being displayed in pretty much every field. So you can cycle through and say you want a vertical speed displayed there, or your G load. And then I can move over onto the right side of the display and say I wanted to see the outside air temperature. I can even move to some of these visual areas that are shaded there and turn on different indications. So here, I've just added a vertical trend to it. And you can make this as complex or as simple as you want. There's multiple screens you can configure. You may have one that's set up for takeoff, one that's for cruise, one that's for landing. Baro you have to set. So it has a built-in barometric pressure sensor for static. But to set it, you simply push the knob. It's just a push to set knob here. And you set the current barometric pressure. So these function really a lot like, or almost exactly like, your existing instruments would. Now, that's of course one more thing to set, but it does give you that backup altimeter, which is a nice thing to have. There's also, this is the transponder control. We were talking about Tail Beacon X. This shows the squawk code, the mode, some other GPS information. And this is where you can go in and change your squawk code. Say done there. And it sets that. So it's a pretty simple interface, all with basically one knob and two buttons on the side. It can, yeah. So it actually does. If you hook this to a Tail Beacon X, it does receive the GPS information. Now, what that can be used for is to get a GPS track to use as a heading indication, and it can also display ground speed. It does not have a database in it, so you cannot say direct to Oshkosh because it doesn't know where Oshkosh is. That's something that we are working on and paired with some of our flight bag partners. But right now, it uses that certified GPS to display basic heading and ground speed information. So this is the DG display. Now, what I've done to do this is I've just held down the center button. And so if I'm on the attitude indicator, if you push in that center button, it switches to the DG presentation. This is that DG card here. Again, very, very configurable. You can change any of these fields around here to display the information that you want. This is the main screen. Down here it says screen 1 of 3. If we go to the second screen, it's going to show the HSI or CDI presentation. Again, this is VFR, but this is coming right off of your GPS system. And finally, we have the moving map, or the kind of magenta line presentation, what we call a GPS arc view. The things that if you had a Tail Beacon X would show here would be the track, as well as the ground speed. And always in this view, you also have a reversionary attitude indicator. So if you ever had an attitude indicator fail and you had your directional gyro still there, you just push the button 3 times, and you have a backup AI. Please. Right now, we have that in a separate display. Yeah, and I'll try to show that to you here if we can get it. The Wi-Fi is a little wonky, but I wanted to do some live traffic. So there's a lot of things we're trying to pack on a small display. So you have to be pretty selective if you do start overlaying both of those pieces of information. So currently, it's set up that this shows the navigation, and a second display shows all the traffic information. Okay, so this is the traffic display, and it's actually pulling in the live traffic data now. Because we're not moving, it's just pointing north. Normally it would point, of course, whichever direction your aircraft is going. And this is a funny looking display right now because we have a lot of traffic on the ground, which are in brown, very close to us, and then not a lot showing in the air. And that's because there's a filter turned on right now. You generally don't want to see the traffic really far away and 30,000 foot above you. So what you're able to do with this is say menu and change a filter to turn off that filter, so we'll see things further away now. And with this, we're able to select aircraft here and see their distance from us, their altitude, what type of aircraft they are, their N number, and things like that. So it's, did I lose audio? Nope, we're back. It's very similar to what you'd see on a portable product or your lap perhaps, but it brings it right in front of you here. So we're really excited that this is the start of putting together that connected cockpit and really being able to share the information that's been stuck in your panel currently back out, and to be able to bring in this information at a really low cost. Because if you've ever tried to buy a certified ADSB receiver, you know that they cost about as much as the airplane sometimes, where you can purchase these devices for as low as a few $100s. Get back to the slideshow here. All right, so that's our 3-inch product. It's really our flagship product. It's the primary indicator. Before we had that, we had the AV20. Does anyone here have an AV20? Got one winner. It is a 2-inch instrument that is approved as an FAA clock replacement, or approved by the FAA as a clock replacement. So if you have probably a broken clock sitting in your panel, for about the same price as replacing that clock, you can get this device, which is a modern digital device that does 12 things instead of just being a clock. It can interface to your audio system. It has pitot-static sensors, so it does angle of attack, which is what's showing on the screen there. It also has a standby attitude indicator. So for those, it's not certified as a primary, of course. It's a very small display, but if you're in trouble, that's a great feature to have built into this really small device. And finally, as part of Tailbeacon X, in the experimental space right now only, it can control the squawk code on there. So both the AV20 and 30 can both control that. Just going over those things again. Slid skip I didn't mention. The clock, you can alternate between GMT and local. And you can also hook up an OAT sensor to it and get true airspeed, density, altitude. One of the really cool things is the engine run timer. It detects the voltage sag as you start the engine and immediately starts a timer on that. So if you're like me and get back and have no idea how long the flight was and sit there puzzled looking at the logbook, now you've got one that'll automatically do that. And these are just 2-inch, of course. Again, trying to avoid hacking and slashing up your panel. We've got really nice quick connect fittings on there for the pitot-static. And this, as well as the AV30, both have a built-in battery that recharges. Sir? The flight timer starts based on the airspeed coming alive. The engine run timer starts based on detecting the engine start sequence. Yeah. You also have 2 configurable timers that can be either count up or count down. So you can use those as tank timers or whatever you may need in your aircraft. This is NORC certified, so it's under a different certification. What that means is it's really easy to get installed in your aircraft. You don't have to be on an AML. A lot of these aircraft that have been forgotten, there's maybe only made 100 of them. No one puts you on AMLs anymore. This is one of those devices that you can install anywhere with just a logbook entry. And it's what's considered a minor alteration. The price of this device is $895, so a lot of capability for under $1,000. So yeah, we're seeing some big variations in installation pricing. What I can tell you is it's from the burden of paperwork, it's as low as anything on the market. From what needs to be installed, it's going to vary based on your aircraft, of course. One of those things is, if you want all of the functionality, you need pitot-static hooked up. So you have to tee your pitot-static system, which can add cost. If I was doing it, that's certainly the reason I would be getting it. If you just want the clock, you wouldn't have to. But to access all of those functions, you do need that. I can't speak to the installation cost. I would get competitive quotes, definitely. If you'd like, Rebecca is our in-house avionics tech in A&P and can kind of give a little advice on what you might expect to see out there. But I know that many of these installations are done in a couple of hours. And Certainly, I would think that high quote that you got was pretty high. Yeah. Do we have any other questions on the panel products? I'm also happy back at the booth to run everybody through things. We are in Hangar C, booth 3081. If you look on the map, I've heard all kinds of crazy stories about where it's sending people down to warbirds and things, vintage. We are in Hangar C. We had a tent set up until the big storm came up, and we decided to take that down as well. But the panel products are all available for you to play with down there. Just so you do know, there's some lead time on delivery on those right now. We've had some resellers here who do have them in stock. I think they've probably run out now. And deliveries are right around, I think, October time frame probably now. So a little advance notice required. You can purchase them on the website, or you can purchase them through a reseller. We're happy either way. But if you do purchase them through us, we just take the information. We don't charge a credit card until they ship. Any questions on that? If not, I've got a little bit here on the Tail Beacon X, which you might find interesting. Please.
For a certified aircraft, do you need a backup? The DG is still backup.
So in a certified aircraft, are you in a typical 6-pack kind of steam gauge replacement? So you don't need another backup. This is a direct replacement for your existing attitude indicator or directional gyro. So the way it works is when they certified your aircraft, what's the aircraft? Okay, certified the Seminole, and they laid out the gauges where they were. Piper evaluated and looked and said, okay, the law says I have to have the visibility here, and I have to do that. So you can't pick up and move your attitude indicator across the airplane, right? So it's much easier from a retrofit to remove one and put that same thing back in. But it is certified as primary, so you can get rid of that old one. And so generally, you'll do that with the two things, the attitude indicator and the DG. They have everything required. You don't have to have an extra backup. If you lose power, they have built-in backup batteries. So all of that has been evaluated. And what they found is that these are much more reliable, these generally, I'd say these electronic gauges, than any of the mechanical or vacuum systems. I think the figure I had seen on it to justify the expansion of these installations was that the average vacuum system had a failure every 300 hours, which is not anywhere near the scale of where we want failure rates to be on things. Obviously, modern digital electronics shouldn't be failing every 300 hours or 3,000 hours or really even 30,000 hours. So it makes for a much safer aircraft when you replace these. And that's the reasoning behind the FAA allowing that. You can also install them as a non-required instrument. So if you have your 6-pack already, you can put in another one and have it be a backup. You could have it be a standby. You could have it be a dedicated MFD and show traffic. And so there's a lot of things we're working on. This is a very flexible platform. Right? It can display a lot of things. It just so happens to be a round gauge display that fits really well in everybody's panel. So we're working on a lot of exciting things there. Although we're happy to sell you 2 today, in a few years maybe we'll sell you 6, maybe we'll sell you more. That's our goal there, really, to be able to get more and more of that dynamic content up on your panel. Does that answer your question? Okay.
Okay, it didn't completely answer mine. So
Sure.
basically, if I want to replace my attitude indicator and my DG, I have to buy 2 of yours because one unit cannot serve double duty, correct?
You've got it, yeah. So yeah, the question was, do you have to buy 2 to replace your attitude indicator and DG? Now they both can perform the same function, but the issue is that an attitude indicator by law must always show an attitude indicator. So if you move off that attitude indication screen, you can have all kinds of other information up on it, but you need to have that available there. Now, even on the attitude indicator, we can show a DG. It's just not your typical presentation. So the way it's structured is simply a 1-for-1 swap, 1-for-1 swap. And so you're looking at, in a certified aircraft, about $4,000 to replace those both, plus installation, of course. And then once you do that, you're able to remove the vacuum system. That's not part of this STC. We don't have instructions for removing it on a given aircraft, but that's done by the mechanic afterwards. Please.
Do you use it in a dedicated
so that when it comes on, it goes to that screen, or do you have to cycle through?
Yeah, so the question was if it will come back when you power cycle to the same screen. And the answer is it always comes back to where you were last. So if you were in the DG mode, screen 2, it'll come right back to that. It also has some other really clever things, such as back calculating field altitude and barometric pressure. So you asked about setting where the baro is set. You know, we have essentially a Colesman window. And when you shut down your aircraft, you've left it at field elevation 600 foot. You come back, the barometric pressure is changed. On a normal aircraft with that, with a mechanical instrument, it now thinks you're at 800 foot. Well, we assume you didn't move your aircraft from 600 foot to 800 foot, and so we back calculate the barometric pressure setting and move it back down to 600. So there's some really neat things we can do like that in the unit. Please.
So I would lose all the VOR and ILS.
I can't believe I didn't mention that yet. So the question was VLS, or VOR, ILS, HSI information, horizontal, vertical guidance, autopilot. This is really the next big thing here. So we're working on autopilot integrations. We currently, in the experimental space, are just releasing the TrueTrack integration. We're working with Trio, and then we're also working on the STEC integration for the analog autopilots. Now, that STEC integration also brings with it a box that can get you the instrument guidance. So the way we interface to the GPS, we don't have a scaled CDI. So that's why we say it's VFR only there. And that's why, so it couldn't replace that instrument for you if you're currently have an instrument like that. We only can present the unscaled horizontal information. As soon as we have that, which requires an additional box, we will be able to also show that full approach scaled as you conduct the approach information. And we're working on if that also will present the vertical. But that is coming, and the autopilot integration is what we're hearing loud and clear here. People are very, very interested in. A good chunk of aircraft out there, doesn't matter, they get the 2, and that's all they need. But it's wonderful to see how many people have autopilots and really need that integration before they can pull that vacuum system out.
I wouldn't mind having a third display just for that if you want to display for radios.
Right? Yeah, and to be clear, that this device is designed to speak to your navigator. So the information that we bring in is from your IFR navigator, essentially. So depending on what information it outputs, digitally is what we'll be able to render. So it may not be compatible, with an old Navcom that's outputting that information just from the radio itself, from the nav. Was there another question?
That was the question I was about to ask.
Yeah. So basically, we take the digital information in, and generally, today that's GPS. But whatever comes out over that interface, we're able to show. We don't at this point expect that we'll be designed as a drop-in replacement for some of the older HSIs that were directly tied to a Navcom or to a VOR or ILS. Is there another question? All right. Well, I have 7 seconds left, I'm told. So that ends it perfectly. We good now, or we have a few minutes? Well, I can talk to you a little bit about space-based ADSB and Tailbeacon X, because it's a really interesting topic, and we've spent several years of every engineer in the company's time essentially working on this. Today in the U.S., everything is ground-based. So the U.S. said we've got a couple $2 billion to spend putting in ground stations everywhere. It's great. No one else is doing that in the world. They need a way to be able to talk to ADSB-equipped aircraft. And the way to do that is to put receivers on satellites. So there's a company called Aireon that's done that. And we've worked with them to validate this device. Our Tailbeacon X looks like this. If you've seen a regular Tailbeacon, it has an antenna on the bottom. This one has an antenna on the top and bottom. One antenna talks to the satellites in the sky, and one antenna talks to the ground. So they're able to receive this on satellites and be able to control in these countries that they never have done before. This is how they don't lose airplanes over the ocean anymore. This is how in Alaska and the Hawaiian Islands and the Caribbean, the FAA is also going to be able to get better visibility into aircraft. Because right now, even in Alaska, where it's very mountainous, there's no perfect ADSB coverage. So this is really critical, and we're the only company to develop something like this. There are traditional systems that cost tens of thousands of dollars because they're intended to be put on business jets and Boeing 787s. They were not thought that we would put them on light general aviation aircraft, but the requirements are going to be in countries like Canada that you have a system that can speak to these satellites. So we've got a really unique solution here, and it really ties together with our panel products we're making.